Guess who just bought an extremely weird and rare vehicle? Well, that would be me. It's done only 47,000 kilometers and is just over 25 years old. Let's take a look at my Daewoo Tacuma.
After driving all the way down to Lonsdale to collect it, this egg-shaped car is finally home. Cosmetically, this is one of the nicer cars that I've bought in recent times, and I've never actually seen one of these on the road before, which made sense after I did more research.
There's a new compact people mover on the Australian market with all the space and style you've been looking for. It's called Tacuma.
Yeah, these came out right after Daewoo went bankrupt and were bought out by General Motors.
The new Daewoo Tacuma. Practically speaking, it's perfect.
Well, let's see just how perfect this car really is. Inside, it's very well kept. The condition is consistent with a car that's only done 29,000 miles. For a 25-year-old car, that is not a lot. But there are a few things I could definitely tidy up. You might think it is a large vehicle, but it's surprisingly narrow and easily fits into our garage. This is the CDX model, which has a number of novel features, such as tray tables in the rear, underfloor storage, perfect for crossing a border with some suspicious items, a driver's side armrest, retractable cup holders, a sunglass holder, and wood grain accents, which doesn't date the car at all. It's also got spacious seating in the rear. Those really are some comfy seats, with the added bonus of a fold-down tray table for the most important beverage of all. Cargo space, this egg has you covered. The rear seats also fold forward, and with that pesky cargo shelf out of the way, you can actually fit a lot in here, like a car fridge, since there are many mounting points to tie it down with. And to power the fridge, as well as many other devices on your adventures, consider checking out the new DJI Power 1000 Mini. There are lots of features packed into this 1 kWh portable power station. Charge your portable devices fast and conveniently through the high output USB ports. The built-in 100 watt retractable USB-C cable is also a great addition. Whether you need 12 volt DC or AC power output, the Power 1000 Mini has you covered. Power appliances that draw as much as 1000 watts, or even as much as 1200 watts for select devices. Time for some microwave popcorn. All of this power packed into a rugged, quiet, and highly portable device weighing only 11.5 kilograms. Charge it fast at up to 400 watts using the solar and car input, or charge it even faster using the AC power input at up to 1000 watts. This speed can be controlled using the DJI Home app. The 1000 Mini uses high-quality lithium iron phosphate for a long lifespan designed to exceed 4,000 charge cycles. To help extend the life of the power station, you can also set charge limits in the app. If you're after a great travel companion for your next adventure, this is definitely a compelling option. Find out more about the DJI Power 1000 Mini using the link below and in the description. Thank you to DJI for sponsoring today's video. Delving in deeper, we've got the 2-litre Inline 4 D-Tech engine, with one of the little air hoses becoming rather soft, kinda like it's melting, and with some help from my father, it's time to replace that hose before it completely fails. While he wasn't able to source a matching part, a bit of improvisation got the job done. This breather hose draws air in from the intake as far as I know, and now it can do that without worry of the hose failing.
So yeah, it honestly drives like a new car. Pretty much everything seems good. The AC system blows really cold, the tyres are like new, it drives super straight, it's incredibly smooth. I really love this car. But one thing that I'm still not sure about is the heating system. The seller did mention when I went to go inspect it that the heaters didn't blow any hot air. But considering the condition of the rest of the car and how well maintained it is and the amount of servicing history that there actually is, and the fact that it's literally just been serviced in the last 1,000 kilometers, I wasn't all that worried. I figured maybe because the heaters were barely used, maybe the heater core is simply blocked, or hopefully something simple. Let's delve a little deeper into the engine bay and see if we can find out exactly why the heating system isn't working.
Alright, so we've got some lights on the hosing behind the engine. Let's see if we can't get in there and find out exactly why the heater core or the heating system is not working.
Okay, so I took a look at where the heater core gets its coolant from. Both hoses are disconnected. It looks like they've been cut off for some reason. And if you look at the pipe to the left, it looks like it might have suffered some corrosion. Perhaps that's because it was barely ever used. That's not a good sign.
So, taking a look at the passenger footwell, we've got some pretty obvious environmental storytelling. Yes, it does appear as the heater core had at some point leaked, which is why they had disconnected it.
Well, that's incredibly disappointing. So Yeah, the heaters aren't working because the heater core is literally being bypassed. It's being bypassed because it shows evidence of leaking, which is like, if you don't want heaters or don't care about heaters, that's fine. Summer's coming, so it doesn't really matter, but it's good to have heaters in a car. It's a shame, so it's just bypassing the heater core, and to replace the heater core, it would be incredibly expensive and time consuming to get to it. In most vehicles, you've got to disassemble the entire dash, which could take hours, if not days, especially because I've never done it before. And is it worth doing? Like, it's incredibly time consuming and difficult. Oh man, that really sucks. Like, honestly, if I'd known that was the case to begin with, I probably wouldn't have bought the car. I mean, everything else is so nice and so good. So I'd hoped that maybe it would have been an easy fix. I didn't even think to check that the hoses were disconnected from the heater core. It just really sucks. Like if the ad had actually said that, I probably wouldn't have even gone to look at it, but you know, at least they told me when I got there. But it's such a nice car, but like that's really annoying though. Like that one thing, you know, I plan to keep this for a while, especially because I can put it on Club Rego. But it's like, if I was to ever go sell it, I have to disclose all that, and then that's a massive pain in the ass. I'm really disappointed by that. But ultimately, the car will still drive great, and it's fine. But if you want a heater, you're out of luck. Massive job to fix that. Huge undertaking. Like, it would... Oh well, that sucks.
Well, that sure sucks. The ad made it sound as if the car was perfect. I do suspect that they knew exactly why the heaters weren't working, but just wouldn't tell me. Oh, and I found the old coolant reservoir cap just randomly in the engine bay. That's very weird. That got me wanting to check out the state of the coolant within. I simply pumped out a portion of it. It is fairly green, but honestly it's got a bit of a blue tinge to it. Most blue and green coolants are cross-compatible, so that really shouldn't be a problem. With the car on some ramps, we get a good look at the underside of the engine, which looks very clean. This car was made shortly after Daewoo were bought out by GM, so this has a lot of parts from similar vintage General Motors vehicles. This definitely looks like a car that's done less than 50,000 kilometers. Everything was looking pretty good under here, no signs of leakage. Until I saw this piece of insulation that has drops of coolant in and around it. Whoever decided to bypass the heater core hasn't done a very good job. I tried tightening the clamps, which don't quite stop the slight leak from that hose. I'll add that to the things I need to do. Now, what's it like to drive? Well, it's a tall and narrow vehicle, and you really feel that when going around corners. While it's got plenty of power, it's not really a fun vehicle to drive. You do sit up pretty high in this vehicle, which some people might not like. But what some people, especially my age, might like is the optional PlayStation 1 or DVD player. Yes, this was an option apparently. No PS1 in this particular model though, but it does come with the original CD player and 6-speaker sound system. My Daewoo also came with a first aid kit, hidden under one of the seats, most likely created sometime in 2006, almost 20 years ago. Is anything within still usable? Well, let's take a look. Ooh, it's still sealed, so no one has ever opened this until now. Looks like we've got a good selection of first aid items. It's probably best not to use this stuff given just how old they are though. Just a little expired sodium chloride. I don't think this stuff ages like wine, and that's definitely a cool relic from the past. Another relic from the past is the service and owner's manual that came in a Daewoo branded case. Aw, there's the Daewoo dog. What's the dog doing? Trying to sell cars from a company on very shaky ground. And here we can see that it was first registered in November 30th, 2000. And while this car has super low mileage, records suggest that it was driven fairly consistently over that time period. Alright, let's remedy that leaky bypass hose. It isn't too surprising that some coolant was being lost here honestly, and to stop much of the coolant coming out in the meantime, we've clamped both ends of the hose. The amount of coolant being lost is quite small, but it will be good to finally resolve this. We'll also be shortening the hose since it doesn't need to be that long. Even with the clamps, we did lose a little bit of coolant. The joining piece that we removed was actually too narrow for this hose. Luckily, my father just happened to have the right one lying around. It does pay to keep random parts around, even if you don't think you'll ever need them. For a while, this seemed to eliminate almost all the coolant loss, but every now and then I'd still have to top up the reservoir. And while this car originally sold here in Australia, it has a few quirks. Your horn is not where you think it is. It's very easy to miss. You don't press in the center of the wheel, you press the small buttons on either side. And the fact that the turn signals are on the opposite side did take some getting used to. Thankfully, it has a reasonable turning circle, making it very easy to park. All was well for quite a while, or so it seemed. Driving to work one morning, the car started occasionally misfiring. This triggered a check engine light, which honestly wasn't too surprising. And after work, I carefully limped my Daewoo over to my parents' place. And since this car had quite a bit of service history and had only done 48,000 kilometers at this time, surely the spark plugs would be fine, right? The ignition leads themselves could very well be original, so we had to be gentle. These spark plugs definitely look quite worn. It's good that we're replacing these. They could be the original ones. It does seem likely, as these copper plugs are incredibly old. And while the spark plugs have never seemingly been replaced, at least inside the rocker cover, it looks as if regular oil changes had been done. These must be some really old plugs, as I don't think KLG even exists as a company anymore, which is pretty wild. Overall, these are some fairly worn plugs, one of them looking a little different to the rest. Foreshadowing perhaps. So let's put in the new plugs and see if it solves the misfiring issue. These new plugs do look a bit different, but are apparently compatible with this 2-litre petrol engine. That seems to be running normally now. That stopped the misfiring issues and it revs up totally fine now. I was then able to erase the fault code P0300 for the multiple misfires that it had detected. Over the next few weeks, I observed that some coolant loss was occurring, and I traced that down to the hose, which had always had a bit of coolant coming from the end. And that makes a lot of sense when I saw just how much crud had built up around it. We'll clean up that hose end and put on a new clamp. All that corrosion made it pretty hard for the old clamp to keep coolant in under pressure, it seems. I began by scraping, which I must admit was quite satisfying. Some sandpaper also proved quite useful to get the surface nice and smooth once again. That's definitely quite an improvement, and a bit of silicone will also help keep the coolant inside. After making sure that the hose end was also clean, we put on some of the silicone once the surface I'd just cleaned had finished drying, followed by the new hose clamp. And after topping up the coolant one last time, we had finally stopped all the visible exterior cooling leaks once and for all. And with the help of some eucalyptus oil, I removed most of the gunk, which I assumed was used to hold on an old dashboard cover. It's honestly quite rare for me to buy a car that doesn't require a whole lot of cleaning. I've honestly found this quite a spacious and practical car to get around in. You'll either love or hate the design though. It's polarizing, to say the least, and I totally get why these sold so poorly 25 years ago.
So it turns out this is a very, very rare car. I have never seen another one in person apart from this one. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope to get many years out of this car, as I don't plan on selling it, and I will be putting it on historic rego, just like my Corolla, which by the way is still going really strong. We'll see how that goes throughout the year.
And this was the last shot my camera ever filmed before completely dying. A bad omen perhaps? Well, let's just say you're not going to want to miss the next video. Stay tuned for that.